Hi everybody, this is John Kranz with Compass Games, and I'm going to do an unboxing video that's going to be comparing and contrasting the original Red Star White Eagle, the Russo-Polish War of 1920 that was released by Game Designers Workshop in 1979. David Williams is the designer, and we'll compare that to the all-new Designer Signature Edition from Compass Games. It's a project I worked on with several individuals, including the designer himself, David Williams, and we'll be contrasting both. So what I thought I'd do to start is let's focus just on the Red Star White Eagle GDW release to start. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of zoom in on this game. So again, just a little history of the game. It's from 1979 from Game Designers Workshop. I'd have to say it's one of the more popular games from GDW. It's something that will go for quite a bit of money on eBay, for example. It's quite popular, has a pretty well-known Roger B. McGowan cover on it. Some like it, some don't, just depends on where you stand. It comes with a 22 by 27 inch game map, 300 half-inch counters, and we'll go through the components now. And the reason I want to go through these components quickly is one of the things we do with the Designer Signature Edition is we look to improve these games as best we can. And the goal is not to rewrite the games in terms of changing how the game system works. A lot of folks have bought in games that have been reissued, but the game system's been completely retooled. Doesn't really you can't even recognize the original game, unfortunately. And we understand folks don't want us to change the game just for change's sake. We're only going to make changes if it makes sense based on feedback from players. So this is the original rule booklet from GDW that I'm just going to go through. And the main thing I want you to take away from this is you're going to see the layout of the rules again for late in the 70s. It's fine. It's a 2-column with some graphics inserted, but not too many graphics. As you can see, it's mostly text. Not really a SPI case rules format, but it does have major rules section, which works fine. And to be honest, with the original game, I think some people said they had a little trouble getting into the game, but the game system itself, people just raved about how great a game this was. And there's also a historical article that was done, or commentary on the game. We've got some combat results tables and the zone of control retreat table as well. So again, that's a little bit just contrasting the original rules with the game. I'm not going to really go through the counters. I've got them punched already, as you can see here. But basically, they're half-inch counters. And one of the first things we do with the Designer Signature Edition release is we want to do larger counters so they're easier, they're more legible. They also give us more options in terms of the artwork of how we can add mnemonics to the counters, for example. So again, just these are your standard half-inch counters. Not much else to say about it. I'm using computer glasses now for my eyesight since it's over 30 years since I had this original release. So you know, it's doable, but one of the challenges is the game map itself is quite small. As I mentioned earlier, the map is, I think it's 22 by 27 map, and if I actually pull out some counters here, the actual counters fitting on the map itself can be a little bit tricky as far as fitting things that are next to each other. Things get close, they start bumping into each other. So in terms of the ergonomics of the map, it's a very small, tight hex grid compared to the half-inch counter. So when the counters are on the game, there's a few areas that things can get stacked up a little bit, and things can get pretty messy. Obviously, we're using tweezers today, so there's a way around that, but it is still, you have counters that are often, they're sticking out of the hex outline, for example, on the hex grid. So again, but the map is serviceable. I'm going to zoom back out here just to talk about the map a little bit so we can see that a little bit better. But the original map, again, I think it's a pretty decent map for GDW from back in the day. Again, it's about 22 by 28 map. That's about the measurements. Actually, it's 22 by 27 inch map, so it's got some nice colors to it. Pretty straightforward. So we'll talk about the map that we did for the game here in a moment. And there's a few things we need to cover before we go to the Compass Games edition. So what I want to talk about here is a little bit about some of the player aid cards that are included with the game. So in the GDW release, they did deployment maps. And unfortunately with the deployment maps, they had some errata where these deployment maps were basically unusable. You couldn't really use them for the game. They made some errors on them, so this was sort of a wash. So this is really something you can't use with the game, but the concept of where units deploy can do somewhat of a free deployment with the red shading and the blue shading for the units, the Polish and the Russian units. Nice idea, but unfortunately there was a major problem with how they did that. On the back you've got some black and white information, very helpful to play the game. Nice full color train effects chart from GDW from back in the day. And then they have a Polish rally table that's single-sided because you have to have units on it for the Polish player, also for the Russian player. So this is only going to be single-sided, so you can place counters on top. And then we have the order of battle information. There are multiple scenarios in the game, so there's going to be different information. This, for example, is for the campaign game and Belarus scenario. There's also a Gates of Warsaw scenario. So there's two scenarios in the game. There's Gates of Warsaw, and there's also Belarus, and then there's the campaign game. And then here's some more information. This is just the campaign game and Belarus scenario setup. And again, it's different for the Gates of Warsaw scenario. So again, that's a little bit, and here's the Gates of Warsaw scenario, by the way, as an idea. And then, so I think that's all I really want to cover. I just want to show you what our starting point was with the GDW original edition release. So what I want to tell you now about is how we approach doing a designer signature edition when we reissue really, this is a classic game. This is one that really didn't need a lot of work because the game system really gets a lot of accolades and there wasn't all that much wrong with it. Like I said, the biggest error in the game of all the errata that we found through the years was the deployment card had to be thrown away. It didn't work. But everything else was pretty darn rock solid. So again, kudos to GDW. This was a game I was after David Williams. I finally found him after 2 years of trying so we could reissue this game. So now let's talk about the reissued game, Red Star, White Eagle. So I had some Polish nationals help me pick the artwork for the cover. So this is off really a piece of professional art that was done in Poland for the cover. And again, just a new treatment, a designer signature edition. Again, that basically means our approach is to try to supersize the components. So the counters will be bigger. The maps will therefore have to be correspondingly larger as well. And then we want to do better with all the player aid cards, reformatting all the rules, the organization, getting all the errata in there. And yes, if something needs to be changed as far as rules go, if it's absolutely necessary, we'll go ahead and do that. But the goal is to leave the main, it's to play homage to David Williams' great design. So we're not looking to really, change the game all that much. So here we have the back of the game box, which again talks about the game. This is, it's now 2 maps instead of 1 map sheet. The original GDW was 1 map sheet, 22 by 28. This is 2 full map sheets that overlaps a little bit as well. Larger 5/8 inch counters. That's why we have more than a map. And again, just gives you a little more history about the game. So let's take a look inside the box. And we'll see what we have. So you should always receive from Compass Games their catalog, the African campaign, by the way, which is here on the mailing address side of this catalog mailer. That was our first designer signature edition release that we did. So that was with John Edwards' African campaign, and Red Star, White Eagle is our second. So let's first take a look at the rules we have for the game. So again, as I mentioned, if you remember, the GDW version was mainly black and white. So let me zoom in here, just get a little closer look at the rules. The rules are also available online. If you go to the product page, you can view them. So right away you notice a different approach here. So we've added a full graphic of all the components included with the game. We talked here. This section talks about all the designer signature edition changes we made, incorporating all the errata, supersizing the components. We fixed the deployment maps, which I'll show in a moment, all new artwork for the maps and for the counters. We also separated the counters between Ukrainians and Galician counters to make those little, error-free handling when they switch loyalties in the game. You have 2 different sets of counters based on who has the loyalty with those nationality units. We added some Polish armored trains to the game just to make it easier from the original. And we just added more ergonomics, expanded the flotilla rules. So again, we didn't change the overall game, and we added some brand new historical notes. So you'll see here a big difference from the GDW version again. Full color graphics and tables of everything steps you through, all the unit designations, all the counters, again, all the things you would expect to see. Some examples of play, in this case showing you effective zone of control on movement. Going through, we have more examples of play here as well as far as initiating combat. We have 2 more examples of play here. So again, interspersed throughout the rules, we have good examples of play throughout. When the rules talk about certain things like Russian front or Russian withdrawals or armored trains or any special cases, we always show some of the counters associated with those rules in the game as well. So you'll see here a lot of individual unit counters because we're talking about the different nationalities. So we have counters that look different for those nationalities. So we provide a lot of good detail around that. So again, it's all organized in SPI rules case format as well for better organization. And one thing I'm really pleased with is we had a historian university professor who's an author, who's an expert on Eastern European studies. We had Peter Kroch write a 5-page historical background piece all around the Russo-Polish War of 1920. So a wonderful, fabulous article. I was very happy that we could add to the game. Again, thanks to Peter Kroch for doing that. We've got some further reading, bibliography information for books and for film. And then on the back, the all-important, and this wasn't in the original game, the all-important rules index. So the rules index to help you look up things quickly, as well as the sequence of play. It's all there for you. So a lot of effort definitely went into the rules booklet. Definitely a major upgrade from the original. Speaking of upgrades, we can say the same too about all the displays we have in the game. So we'll start with the deployment maps. So again, the deployment maps did not work in the original game. They were throwaways due to errata, but here we have an example, and I'll try to give you a little bit of a close-up on here. Here we have the game campaign deployment map, and again, this one actually works. So we've got a lot more information in here. You got the hex numbering, it's basically the actual map with the overlay, the specific rules of how to set up. It's all there for you, and best news of all, it's usable. There's no errata behind it. So you're all set. Then we did full color displays for all the setup charts. So this is going to look a lot different as well. And again, thanks to Todd Davis for doing all the graphics here. A much better graphical presentation, a lot more rules. We always try to add mnemonics to all the player aid cards. We add the rules case numbers to the rules as well. So all this is here as well for you. And again, we've got this for the Russians. Russian side, there's 3 scenarios, and given the card configuration, we were able to back print on these cards because depending on the scenario, you're going to be only using one side of these 2 cards at a time. So it's not an issue at all that there's something here because you're not going to be using them depending on which scenario you're using. So again, the same thing as well for the Polish player. Here we have the Polish campaign game setup, as well as, sorry, that wasn't in full camera view, I just noticed, but here we go. We have the Polish game campaign setup with the reinforcement charts pictured here. And then again, the back sides, we've got the Belarus scenario and the Gates of Warsaw scenario. So all that's there. And basically with the Belarus scenario, notice here there's also the reinforcement chart you can be using with that as well. Here we have the all-important Gates of Warsaw turn record track, or if you're doing the campaign game, which also includes the Belarusian scenario, we also have the turn record track for that. So you decide which game you're going to play. You have your dedicated treatment for that. We had one basic oops in the rules that we accidentally removed from here. We removed the mnemonic that said what the replacement values represent. You'll see here a 1/6, 161616. These are all the replacement values. And a big oops on our part, we forgot to leave in the explanation that the first value is cavalry replacements, and the second number, the bigger number, is infantry replacements. So again, just a quick note about one thing you'll need to know, otherwise the game is basically errata-free. The project team did a great job, and it's really an errata-free game, to be honest. They did a great job with it. So let's take a look at the game maps. Again, we got 2 full-size maps here, so quite big, so I'm going to have to make room here. So again, these two maps are going to overlap. They're going to accommodate the 5/8 inch counters. So again, very big maps that are going to overlap. Beautiful maps by Todd Davis again. We've got mnemonics on the map as well. We added more information on the maps in terms of anything having to do with the victory conditions, victory point values, etc. You'll notice here we also added movement type information as well, and Polish Motomech breakdown, stacking information. We add mnemonics to these games over the original to try to make them better and easier to follow. So this is an example of how we're enhancing all the components. Some of the components we definitely enhanced were the game counters. We not only made the counters bigger, but we made them smarter as well. So here we have one of the counter sheets. Again, the Russian and Polish units. Russian in red, Polish in blue. We did quite a few things here. We added extra mnemonics to the counters. So there's a term in the game called secondary units. That has to do with the size of the units, and we added little shading in the unit size boxes of which units are called secondary type units. That's brand new. We also added mnemonics if these are non-replaceable units with a little rectangular square symbol to the right of the icons or to the right of the unit size boxes. So again, we added mnemonics. We tried to make the game counters not just bigger but smarter. And I think overall in terms of appearance, here's the back side. And again, some more mnemonics about how to place the counters. And again, we have a second sheet of counters. This one was actually the second sheet here, but you'll notice we actually did cut out the bottom row. That wasn't needed for this game, so we actually used it to complement another game we shipped. So this is the full counter sheet number 2 minus the one row. We just split them up into 2 sheets, and here you've got the nationalities. The other counters from the different nationalities are included in here, as well as the charge markers, etc. So again, really nice, easily handleable counters. And again, what I particularly like about these counters, if you look at this hex size here, is these counters, I'm gonna pop a counter out. I'm actually gonna pop a counter out here. It is no longer mint. I wanna show you how comfortable these pieces fit inside that game map. This is way inside the hex grid, plenty of room. So if I needed to add additional units, and I don't even have to clip the corner pieces of the counters here. I'm just gonna pull them out of the sheet. I'm not gonna take the dog ears off the counters. Look at all the space we have for the counters on the map. Again, another enhancement over the GDW release. So again, that pretty much covers everything. All we have left are the all-important player aid cards. So of course, we're going to make, we did have a color, GDW did some nice color train effects chart. Ours are a little more on steroids, so we have 2 of the same type of chart. We have one for each player. Let me go ahead and make that a little bigger so you can see that. So here we have the same chart. We need one for each player. So we've gone ahead and done that. Added a lot more information around train effects, including combat effects, all on one side. And then on the flip side for each player is a lot more explanations around combat and the CRT results, adding the fortification defense modifiers, the ZOC retreat table. Again, nice big footprint, US letter size, durable cardboard. Again, so this is how we approach our Designer Signature Edition release. I hope this information helps you as how we approach these projects. We start by looking at the feedback from players from the past of how we can improve these games, what we can do to improve them across the board. We're not looking again to make wholesale changes to the game system unless something is really broken. That's the only time we'll really do it. But otherwise, you're going to have a game that's really going to pay homage to the original David Williams classic game, which I'm a huge fan of. And I hope, this game's been out for about 60 to 90 days now. This one really was a great project. We had some great project team members who all had vast experience with this game over the years. They were experts at the game, and we all worked really hard to make sure we honored the original game and enhanced it as much as we could. So I want to say kudos to the project team. I think everybody's going to love this game, and I hope this video was a nice, helpful contrast to you, so where we could teleport back from 1979 to 2018. Thanks for watching the video.